Now, on the one hand, Democrats are imploring the intel agencies to ignore the presidential order on declassification until consulting with Congress. On the other hand, they are demanding the FBI pick up a probe into what may or may not have happened between Judge Kavanaugh and Dr. Christine Blasey Ford. All this as the president appears to maintain an unusual distance from the mayhem, unusual at least for him. Let's bring in Fox News senior political analyst Britt Hume. Welcome, Britt. Great to have you with us.
Thanks, Shannon. Nice to see you.
All right, I want to play something the president said today when he's been repeatedly asked about the Kavanaugh situation. Here's what he said.
Hopefully, the woman will come forward, state her case. He will state his case before representatives of the United States Senate, and then they will vote.
He's been uncharacteristically on message. We talked about this last night. No tweets about the accuser, very measured tones in what he's saying, what they're going to do, how it's going to play out.
Well, it's pretty obvious. I mean, there are a lot of good reasons for that. One is that that's good for a president to be measured, just generally speaking. That's something the president doesn't always seem to care very much about, but in this case he does, and there are good reasons for that. One is that, look, this business about paying attention to and taking seriously women who claim to have been violated by men is a powerful notion. And neither the president and particularly I think his people around him advising him want to see him do anything that would appear to be disrespectful toward the accuser here. Now, look, it's very late in the game. My own view of this is, as a reporter who's covered these things these many years, is that the stench of bad faith, not necessarily on her part, but on the part of the Democrats on this, is so heavy that if you can't smell it, you need to have your nose looked at. But nonetheless, and you know the president feels that way about it, but he's not saying, and the Republicans on the committee are being very careful about what they say as well, for the same reason. We've got a midterm election coming up. You don't want to inflame the Me Too movement.
Mm-hmm. So tonight, last we're hearing is from her attorney saying that they feel a full law enforcement investigation needs to happen before the committee moves forward with anything, with hearings or anything else, which communicates to us that I don't think she's going to show up on Monday, which begs the question about whether they'll have the hearing, whether they'll go ahead and have a vote.
Well, what I think the Republicans are going to try to do is to say, look, she emerged. We opened the committee to her. We set a date. We gave her a week to prepare. Her lawyer had previously indicated that she was prepared to testify. Now apparently she's not, and she wants to tell us how to conduct the investigation, or her lawyer does. And my sense is that the Republicans will move forward. The Democrats will scream bloody murder that this is a failure to investigate this properly and that the FBI should be involved in all the rest of it. It'll be up to the White House as to whether the FBI gets involved, and the word we're getting from there is that they're not going to do this.
I don't think so. Okay, so I want to read through a couple of tweets to talk about how the media is covering this. Mark Knoller, who a lot of people think is a very measured voice in a lot of occasions covering the White House, he says, President Trump says he still hasn't spoken to Judge Kavanaugh, but he says he knows he has POTUS's support. President is critical of Dems and Senator Feinstein for handling of allegation against Kavanaugh, says FBI doesn't want to reopen its background investigation. Then Chris Cillizza picked it up and said, oh, no big deal, just the president telling the FBI to ignore an allegation of sexual assault, which is not what the president said.
It is not what the president said. And Chris Cillizza, who's a good guy, and I've known him a long time, he ought to be ashamed of himself.
Well,
that's outrageous.
She picks this up and says, this is a great example of how media bias is compounded by journalists not being good at basic understanding or accurate description of Trump's statements and their meaning. Cillizza is apparently ignorant of the fact that the FBI already addressed the issue.
Well, she's got a point. I mean, I must say to you, there was a correction at the bottom of a New York Times story just today, at which the Times had reported that Mark Judge, who was allegedly the other man in the room when this event happened, had said that he had seen it. He said the opposite.
It's exactly the opposite of what his statement
Exactly the opposite. I mean, that's a bad mistake. There have been a number of others recently. Bad mistake. Big editor's note in the New York Times to correct a totally unfair story about Nikki Haley and curtains in the ambassador's residence in New York. These are the kind of mistakes that used to be firing offenses. Bad stuff.
Yeah, and now they give the president more ammunition, and what he says is the fake media and his, suggestion that they're not always.
And this is not a good thing in America to have this level of distrust in the media. It's not. And the media have earned it to some extent. The president, I think, goes over the top in criticizing them, but there's plenty to criticize at this stage.
All right, Britt Hume, always great to see you.
Thank you, Shannon.
Thanks for coming in.